And let me start on your first point. We are living in an environment of unfolding uncertainty. From a policy point of view, from a macroeconomic and a market conditions point of view. So that's my first question. How would the panel characterize the balance of macroeconomic and market conditions and risks as they apply to energy pricing? And if I could start with Saad first, please.
First, thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister of Energy, for inviting me to this distinguished panel, and it's great always to be in India. I think on a personal note, Delhi is very special to me. I love coming to Delhi for a specific reason. My father was the first ambassador of Qatar in '74 to India. So Delhi ko bahut pyar karta hai. हिंदी बहुत अच्छा जानता है लेकिन अभी भूल गया पहला बहुत अच्छा जानता है. So anyway, I used to speak fluent Hindi. I can dabble with it, but I'm not as fluent as I used to be. But anyway, so first of all, I'd like to thank His Excellency for his excellent speech that I think captured all what I could have said in a much better way than I could have said it. But I think one thing regarding pricing and so it's important to understand that energy poverty exists in the world. You have 1 billion people that does not have basic power that we have. I think you see the example of what the Prime Minister Modi mentioned earlier, and I think I applaud him and his government and the Honourable Minister to the plan that has been put in place by India. And I think it's an example of how you need to balance between the requirement of the nation, ensuring that you can have some renewables, you can have gas that is sustainable, and you need a base load for any country for the intermittence. And you see the methanol, you see all the elements. You need everything, including solar, wind, to cater for the demand that's needed in the future. I think the cancel culture of saying, I don't want this or that, some people were really pushing for it, and I think it depends on where you are and what your environment is. Maybe if you have hydro in abundance, and even that turned out to be not as reliable sometimes. So the intermittency of these energies are a problem. So I think to make sure that we can have affordable fossil fuel, affordable renewable sources, we need to have all these investments in whether it's oil and gas, whether it's renewable, and also in efficiency. And the example of what was done in India, where you have villages that were promised to have electricity, you have 100% villages, as I understand, that are connected by electricity in India, which is a magnificent undertaking, and to have that. And also the ambition of going to 500 gigawatts by 2030, okay, and having the mix that you have. So I think India is a very good example of what needs to be done in most countries. Every country has its specifics that it has to cater for. But if we don't invest in LNG, for instance, I'll give you an example. LNG today in Europe has spiked up to $15, $16. If you see what Qatar is doing, we are increasing our production of LNG from 77 to 160 million tons globally, to 142 in Qatar, and we have a project in the US that will take it to 160 that will start end of this year, early next year. So this production is going to start next year and incrementally increase in the next few years. If Qatar did not invest in this and take a decision for more than $100 billion of investment about 6 years ago, when people were saying we shouldn't be doing LNG and we should have all green and all renewables, imagine what would happen when you don't have that supply coming on the market. Okay, these spikes that you're seeing going to 16 could go to 25 and 30. So I think we are all supporting it. And this is just an example of LNG, for instance. But you look at the crude oil and others. The petrochemical sector, renewable cannot make plastics. It can give you energy. But you need refineries and you need oil products and you need to actually manufacture the carpets that we're walking on, the suits we're wearing. All of it has some form of oil and gas. So I think we need to be reasonable. There is absolutely no doubt the environmental issues that we're faced with need to be catered for. So if you look at what we're doing in Qatar, for instance, the LNG plants that we're building, we have the largest CO2 sequestration site in the MENA region. We're actually injecting 2.5 million tons today. We started in 2015 when nobody even knew CO2 sequestration, or most people didn't talk about it. We're going to go up to about 11 million tons. All our ships are powered by LNG. We're using the best equipment with the least emission possible. Qatar today, although we're the largest LNG producer, or second largest LNG producer now in the world, 10% of our power, about 10 years ago we had no solar power. In Qatar, 10% of our power is from solar. Mid this year, we're going to inaugurate another 2 plants. We'll have about 15% from solar. By 2030, 30% of the power in Qatar will be from solar. So we're doing our part to also make sure that we are doing our best on the environment. And I think we all collectively need to be fair to make sure that there is ample supply of resources to make it affordable and reliable and available to all countries around the world for their growth and economic growth. And also we need to make sure that we're doing enough on the renewable and on the efficiency side to have a good balance. But cancel culture is wrong, and I think people are discovering that will not cut it.
What then is the optimum policy framework?
What was mentioned by all of us is exactly the same. I mean, we all know there is a problem. We all know there is, from an environmental point of view, we all know that we need to have all energy sources. I mean, to me, you talked about nuclear. To me, any country that has the access to the technology, can do it safely, and can afford it, and doesn't do it, if their public is agreeable to it, I think they should absolutely do it. Because you need nuclear, you need gas, you need oil, you need renewables to get a good energy mix for the long term. So whoever can do it should do it. I mean, as far as nuclear is concerned, for instance, we need all sources. We're going to have a billion and a half to 2 billion people here in the next 30 to 40 years. You know, we're going to need the middle class is increasing. We need more power. We need more. I mean, data centers alone. People are talking about huge, power requirements that only 2 years ago were not even on the map of anybody or on the plans for anybody. So I think you need all energy mix. Every country is different. When you talk about Norway having almost 90% hydro, it's different than India, okay, and their situation with the population and the energy mix they can have. Qatar is different than, everybody's different. If we keep supporting gas producers, oil producers around the world to develop more and do it responsibly, there are ways to do it responsibly and ways irresponsibly. Most companies now have ESG requirements that they put in. You can do sequestration, you can do a lot of things. But for this equation to work, or this system to work, you need affordable energy, as His Excellency mentioned. These spikes that you see are increased tremendously if you have lack of supply. So when people keep harping on oil and gas producers and demonizing them, and you shouldn't be producing more oil and you shouldn't be producing more gas all along the last 10 years, that actually doesn't help in solving the environmental problem, and doesn't help in making this equilibrium or some kind of a balance between pricing that you need. So we need affordable, ample supply of oil, gas, and investment in all the other green initiative. Can I make an uncharacteristic comment
Please.
about coal?
Please.
I think there's a difference. What we're saying here is you need to look at a country that actually has the resource and has coal, and the difference between that and a country that's importing coal. There's a big difference. And the growth rate in that country. So if I would put India and China, for instance, as huge countries, okay, I mean together more than half of the world or half of the world, and they have ample resources of their own coal, and then we tell them as energy sector or as leaders around the world, you shouldn't produce your own coal and depend on imports. You need to utilize the coal that you have, do it responsibly, see if there are ways to mitigate that, but if the growth rate and the ambition of His Honorable the Prime Minister is going to stay intact, I think there is no way to do it if you say I cancel coal. I could be completely wrong, but a transition to that and doing it slowly and making sure that people who have their own resources can also utilize their resources and come down and what I'll tell you something we are doing for coal as Qatar. We're building the largest blue ammonia plant in the world. It's going to be starting production next year. That mixed with a lot of customers on coal are talking to us because you mix it with coal and it reduces it's one of the solutions to reduce some of the emissions from coal. But I think we should get away from cancel culture on everything. We need all resources to be on deck.